with the successful establishment of colonial government and structure in most places in Africa, the Europeans went ahead to create economic structures that suited their intentions. And the major intention here was basically the issue of imperialism or pure exploitation. Well, these intentions were characterized, presented in many areas, mainly on the economic structures and systems on the ground. But for the interests of this particular presentation, we're going to focus more on the agricultural activities. The European or the colonial agricultural structures or systems, we are focused mainly on the production of raw materials or raw materials, which were basically the major interests of these Europeans or of the Europeans. The Europeans only succeeded or made serious move to support cultivations of materials that were highly needed by European firms in Europe, which were basically the intentions of acquiring or creating raw materials. Well, although Africans were already doing agricultural activities before Europeans came, but the Europeans decided to encourage agricultural activities based on their desires. In many areas, or I would say emphasis on production of raw materials like cotton, cocoa, palm oil, and the palm kernel were highly the major interests of Europeans. For instance, around the 1902, the British Cotton Growers or Growing Association, a group of businessmen that grow cotton mainly in Britain, started pressurizing the British government to establish the growing of cottons in most of, if not all, the British colonies in Africa, where the soil and the cultivation ability or capacity were able to be presented. This encouraged the investment of the British and the creation of policies by the British in most of their colonies towards the cultivation of cotton. The same thing was also done by a very important big manufacturing firm, Lever Brothers. Lever Brothers as well pushed or made push towards the British to encourage the cultivation and the production of palm kernel, and then also some other firms that require palm oil also pushed towards that. Other firms that were into confectionaries or manufacturing of beverages, for instance, encouraged the cultivation and as well the processing of cocoa. What this really meant was that the Europeans did not really take much interest in diversification in agricultural activities. They didn't really go into helping the cultivation of some other crops that were not really of economic benefit to them at home. Well, that was not to say that Africans did not cultivate those ones, but unfortunately, most of those ones, because of the commercialization of these raw material based crops, some other crops suffered a bit. There were as well some other crops introduced by these Europeans with the intention of getting their raw materials. Well, research centers were established by these Europeans in order to teach Africans and other interested Europeans the best way of cultivating these raw material based plants or crops in their territories in Africa. For instance, in 1902, the Germans set up an agricultural research center at Amani in Tanganyika. In the Nigerian area, the British set up some research centers at Lokoja and some other areas in what later became Nigeria. The same thing was done by the French in Togoland, Cameroon. So, using this method, seeds were distributed to these farmers in these research centers, and they were encouraged to go and cultivate them. For example, cotton seeds were distributed to farmers who were taught improved method of cultivating the crop. Textbooks on cotton cultivation were also published in various African languages and distributed free of charge to farmers who showed interest or who were actually encouraged to cultivate. Whether they like it or not, most of these farmers were forced into cultivating these raw material based crops. Well, the British and the French did not do such to the extreme. However, the encouragement given to the growers of cash crops were such that no other farmer or cultivation or community in the cultivating area could afford to say, no, we are not interested. Well, to this, there was issue with the concept of impoverishing of the economy, because the major interest was mainly to gather the proceeds of this cultivation and ship them to Europe, where they were processed, and then they will start with by marketing the already processed goods in Europe, and then shipping down back most of these processed goods to Africa, where they as well established their market. Remember that the method was in two ways: already colonization and as well the establishment of market. We're not leaving aside the exploitation of the concept of raw material creation. Well, it was actually the system. And this was the basic reason for some little or ineffective infrastructural development. For instance, in the area of railway construction, most of the colonies here in Africa where railway were constructed, most of the railways were basically intended to move these goods or these raw materials from the hinterland to the coastal area, where they are pushed in, transferred into the ship and shipped down to Europe. And also, when these finished goods were coming back from Europe, the railway played a role in moving these finished goods into the hinterland. A feature of colonial policy was that only crops that were actually of best yields and of production, with low cost of production, were encouraged to be grown in many areas. Research efforts were not actually directed at diversification. The result of this attitude was that African countries became mono crop economies, at least best relying only on few export commodities, or only on export commodities that were basically coming from Europe. In most African countries, only one or two commodities constituted more than 70% of total export. For instance, in Uganda, coffee and cotton constituted between 75 to 80% of the total export. In Nigeria, before the advent of petroleum, the three major commodities were on the ground were mainly granules, palm produce, and cocoa. And if you look at the structure of Nigeria, as at that time, the northern part was mainly involved towards the cultivation and exportation of granite. The southwestern part were mainly cultivating and exporting cocoa. While what is known today as the southeastern and the southern part were mainly towards the cultivation of palm produce. This were majorly because these products were the desires of the Europeans, and the raw materials needed heavily by the British in Britain. So, well, with the independent structures, well, there have been some readjustments by African leaders, but unfortunately, they need to do more. Someone actually said, it is time to readjust, a continuous readjustment, not to continue laying blames. But these things are actually presented and taught so that people will understand the history and the developments in the past, which are very vital towards the restructuring of the present and the future. Unfortunately, for some days, I was not able to put up presentation. I basically lost my voice for almost 3 days. I'm trying to get my voice back. So please, we seek your support, because your support is what will definitely help us to create and produce more of this. In the comment section, I'll put a link of this Buy Me Coffee link. If there's any support you can give to us through that platform, you can make it available to us. And with time, we are also making available a very free platform where we will pick up any topic in African history and teach it extensively. And we will also continue our YouTube channel presentation. If you are watching us for the first time, please subscribe to our channel, click on the notification icon, share our content, because that's how our presentation will get to a lot of persons that need it. And that's actually another heavy way of supporting us. Thank you for still being part of our channel.